Welcome, everybody, to the Code with Jason Meetup, or should I say, Code with Jasons, because we have two of us Jasons here tonight. Jason Charnes, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for letting me come hang out.
Yeah, thanks for coming here. So obviously you're going to be speaking at Sin City Ruby 2024, which I'm super pumped about, and I think a lot of other people are too. And of course, you're a co-host on the Remote Ruby podcast, which is maybe the main way people know about you. But in addition to that, maybe you could tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I've been writing Ruby code for 10 years now, professionally for 9. And in Memphis, don't have a ton of hobbies outside of programming, besides like watching basketball, and recently got into Formula One. That's my that
Oh,
Drive to
nice.
Survive show really turned me on to racing.
So you went in person to a Formula One thing?
No, I watched a Netflix show, and
Oh,
now
I
I'm
see.
super into watching Formula One.
Got it. Yeah, I've never been into like NASCAR and stuff like that, but the Formula One, I haven't watched very much, but that to me is like more interesting because those guys go so fast, and the cars are like, I don't know, it feels like it's so sensitive, like the steering and everything like that. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it feels like a mix of like being super technical, but also being like super flexible too, like to think on the spot. It's really interesting.
Yeah. If I did that, I would absolutely die.
I feel like so when we were in Sin City last year, a bunch of us went racing,
Yeah.
and yeah, I went a third of the speed they go, and I was terrified. So
What kind of car did you get?
I think I did an Audi. It's an R8 maybe or something like
Oh,
that.
wow. How
And
did you
then
like it?
it was cool. It was cool. I did that in a Corvette. Neither one real comfortable for people my size, but it was cool. They're small cars though.
Yeah, I have in a lot of the cars that I've owned in the past, I'm 6'1", so my head sometimes like brushes the ceiling. But yeah, I did that too in Vegas where you get to race, not after Sin City Ruby, but just on a different occasion, twice actually. And I drove a Ferrari, and it was hard. I actually have a YouTube video up of me doing that. Um, it was hard because you have the guy in the passenger seat like telling you what to do, and he's like, accelerate, turn left, decelerate, now turn left again, uh shift into third, shift into fourth, shift
Yeah.
back into third, and it's like,
Downshift.
yeah, and it's like, and you like can't fuck up, like, because if
Yeah.
you mess up too bad, you'll crash, and there's like people behind you and people in front of you, and so I was just like sweating the whole time. And after I got done, I'm like, that was like really fun, but also like not fun at all. It was very stressful.
Yeah, and it's not cheap either. So I feel like there's better ways I
Mm.
could maybe spend my money that doesn't stress me out. But we'll see. I'll probably do it again
Yeah,
next
it's one
year.
of the fastest ways to blow hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Although Las
Yeah.
Vegas provides many opportunities to do that in a variety of fashions.
I was only gonna do one car, and then everybody's like, I'm gonna do two. And so I was like, well, I don't want to be left out, so I'll do
Yeah.
two as well. And then I didn't have as much money.
Um, so that was an instant digression to something that had nothing to do with anything. But that's the way these things go. Do you think you would do the racing again in for the next time you go?
Yeah, especially now that I watch it. Like now that I watch like more like track racing, not just Formula One, I'm more interested to try it again.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I might do it. I don't know. Um anyway, let's bring it back around to technical topics. And we had a couple more people join, which is great. This is a nice turnout. Um Jason, just to ask you kind of a random question. What have you been up to lately programming wise? What kind of any specific technologies you've been working with? Anything you've been thinking about? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, day job is still lots of Ruby, lots of Rails. I veered off a little bit into Rust earlier this year. I wanted to get into some hardware programming.
Mm,
And that was just like a rabbit hole of like, oh, I should learn C. Oh, I should learn Rust. And I went through the Rust, like their book, the Rust book, and it's really good. I didn't
mm.
finish it because I kind of lost steam. But yeah, it was really enjoyable while I was doing it. Rust is like a whole different way of thinking.
Interesting. I've never dived into that. I should. I'm kind of a monoglot when it comes to programming. I've done stuff other than Ruby in the distant past, but for the last 10 plus years, it's been only Ruby. I feel like I'd be more well rounded and have a better perspective if I dabbled in some other languages too.
Yeah, I I have like the problem with shiny objects.
Hmm.
But I don't know, every time I start using something else, I always end up like, well, I know Ruby and I really like it. And I just kind of like slowly just end up back doing Ruby.
Yeah. There's that quote. It's like, and at the end of all our traveling, we shall return home and know it for the first time, or something like that. And I feel like that would be a valuable experience to have with Ruby. Go explore some other languages and then come back to Ruby and be able to have a new appreciation for it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've how do I word this? I've never felt more like an idiot than trying to like write Rust code. I just, you know, I would not reference something right, or like lose a reference and the compiler would be like, you're an idiot. I'd be like, I know. So yeah, it's kind of nice being back in Ruby land where it's like, yeah, just do whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, I really want to try that now. I bet I would have the exact same experience. Um, Mike told me just now in the chat, he said for about the thousandth time to me, explore functional programming, which is excellent advice. And I keep not taking it. But I really need to do that. Do you ever mess with functional programming at all, Jason?
That was my itch in like 2017, 2018. I guess that was around the time like Elixir started picking up steam too. I got into it. I read a book on Closure
Mm.
because basically I watched a Rich Hickey talk, the creator of Closure, and decided that anything he says or creates, I should just like follow. I don't know. I was really like drawn to him.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so yeah, he's the creator of Closure. So I listened to some Closure. List really isn't my thing, but I like a lot of the concepts. We actually talked on Remote Ruby last week. I guess I'll go out this week about like I kind of wonder what programming would be like if I had learned programming through a functional language first instead of a object-oriented language, and how it might have shaped the world a little differently for me.
Yeah. I've picked up some ideas just from from observation or whatever. From the functional programming world, like immutability and stuff like that. And I think the benefit of stuff like that is it makes things easier to understand. Like the more state you have, the more you have to like keep track of in your head. And so the less state there is, the less you have to keep track of in your head. And it just makes the execution flow easier to follow. Maybe Jason's grabbing a book. Yeah.
I am. So Eric Normand, he teaches Closure and functional programming. He has a book called
Yeah.
Grokking Simplicity, and it's literally the subtitle is Taming Complex Software with Functional Thinking. And I haven't gotten all the way through this book yet, but yeah, there's something, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Hey,
hear
if
the
it's so simple,
words,
how come the book had to be so big?
yeah, why is it almost 600 pages? But it's interesting. I don't know. I hear people often talk about the word simple often gets used when it comes to functional programming.
Hmm.
And as someone who feels like their life is complex enough, I would I would love to explore that more. But again, every time I start, I just kind of slowly walk back to Ruby.
Well, simplicity is really hard to achieve. And it's like, I don't know, like it takes a lot of work to create simple code, but then it pays itself back many times over. Yeah. So obviously I was like tongue in cheek about like, why does that book have to be so big? Because like it takes so many years to learn how to make code that seems simple. But it's actually ironically complex to create simplicity.
Mm, yeah, it's difficult. And I've accepted in the last couple of years that there is just always going to be like complexity in trying to solve real world problems with code. And so I've been trying to find that balance of uh typically that complexity comes in the form of like the business domain. And so I've just accepted there's going to be some of that. So like the more I can keep like other things simple leaves room for me to really chew into like the more complex problems.
Yeah, and I think about irreducible complexity and incidental complexity. Like at the last job I worked at a medical clinic, we had to do scheduling, and that was pretty complex. We had to have, for example, each doctor had like a schedule template, and the template could repeat for an arbitrary amount of time. And you had to be able to do like one-off cancellations of these appointment blocks and stuff like that. And it was just very complex. And that was all irreducible complexity. There was no way around it. But then there's software that's written that's more complicated than it needs to be. And it's like the domain is this complicated, but then the software is this complicated. And this part of it, this part of it is irreducible complexity, and this part is incidental complexity. And obviously the goal is to have the incidental complexity as close to zero as possible. And obviously the irreducible complexity is irreducible. You just have to have it.
Yeah, I like those terms. I haven't heard irreducible before, but yeah, it's I feel like when I finally am ready to like achieve that, it'll be time to retire. So
Yeah.
just gonna keep working at it.
There you go. By the way, just curious, not to put you guys on the spot or anything, but is anybody here for sure going to go to Sin City Ruby 2024? Do you guys know yet?
I'm interested.
Andrew, you said you are?
Likely, yes.
Likely. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I'm going.
Who just said that?
Chuck.
Oh, nice. Anybody else? All the rest of you are dead to me. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I was just curious. Yeah, 2022 was a lot of fun. Obviously, you were there, Jason. I thought you gave a really nice talk. And I'm not saying that just to say that. I really enjoyed it. It was really entertaining. The one slide that really stuck out to me, maybe you should tell us, because my memory is only vague, but it had something to do with you going to the dentist.
Oh, yeah, I had a abscess tooth when I was in Vegas in 2015 or 2016 and had to go to a real sketchy part of town on a Saturday that only took cash to get a tooth pulled. But
I
it
love
made the
that.
rest of the trip wonderful because I wasn't in
Mhm.
pain anymore.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because that was one of my favorite talks. I've only given it once at that conference, and I don't know, I kind of liked that it wasn't recorded. It was just fun. The whole vibe was good. I really liked that conference. So much so
Yeah.
that I'm ready for next year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, your talk, it was about database views, if I recall correctly, which
Yeah.
is, I feel like maybe a little bit of an underutilized concept. I really enjoy it. It's one of those things where it's like, it's not an everyday thing. It only has like limited use cases, but the use cases where it comes into the picture, it like really is really nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things I don't know about Postgres that I want to know, or just databases in general, that I feel like would make my life a lot better as a developer. And
Oh, Jason, you don't know this yet, and I can't reveal the name publicly, but we have a Postgres guy speaking at Sin City Ruby.
okay, perfect.
Yeah. Do you know who I'm talking about by chance?
Do they have a book coming out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm gonna have him bring. Well, I suggested to him that he bring a bunch of copies of his book, and we can like give them away as prizes or something
Perfect.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were at the last Sin City, and
Yeah.
really, like, that's where we met actually. So
Yeah, that's where I met this person also. Yeah, I'm recording a podcast with this person soon, and we're gonna announce the fact that he or she is speaking at the conference when we talk on the podcast. Um, yeah, anyway, getting back to database views, if anybody's not familiar with database views, the way I think of it is like a query made into a fake table. Like from the perspective of the database, like it doesn't know that it's not just another table. So you could do, for example, I don't know, join two tables together, and that's your query, and you turn that into a view. You just say like create view, and then you put the query after that. And then you can query that view. You can join that view against other views. Anything you can do with a table, you can do with this view. And there's a couple of reasons that's useful. Like sometimes you might have like a query that's repeated throughout your code base. And it's just a lot more convenient to put that in a view than to try to abstract that away into some other piece of code or something like that. I found it really nice for reporting, especially when like there's kind of a nested query situation. Like you always find yourself needing to like repeat this very similar chunk over and over. I might create a view for that, and then all my reports are just kind of variations on that. And then views do also have a performance benefit. They'll, in my experience, perform better than if you just did that as a query.
yeah, one of my favorite use cases for Vue you just mentioned, but like at Podia we have orders, and then people can have communities and their customers pay for that, so they have monthly invoices. And for historical reasons, those are two separate entities. And well, we needed to like utilize displaying invoices, so we just basically take from both tables, union it, and that's a view of just invoices. But somebody mentioned in the chat Scenic, and so Scenic's a Ruby gem that will basically make these views work incredibly well with Active Record. And so now we have this invoice model in our app, and we can put scopes on it. We can put associations on it, just like a regular database table. And those kinds of edge cases are really good. And then also materialized views, which are basically like you take a snapshot of data and then you can refresh it every so often. That's really handy for these queries that take, I don't know, a long time to run. And you can just take a little snapshot of it. It's really quick to query, and then periodically you just say, hey, I need to update this. That's really good for reporting for us in some areas.
I've never done that, but I can definitely see how that would be compelling. Mike, you said in the chat, I would add popular complexity, things that we accept as complex because of how they are generally done. I find that really interesting. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm trying not to pull out the old saw of going against the convention of the Rails groupthink, right? But it's definitely a thing, right? For a while there, we're all like, oh, we need sprockets and we need these really complicated mechanisms for making the asset pipeline, right? And it was all kind of terrible and really difficult to work with. And then it was devise, right? And we're all trying to figure out how do Rails engines actually work, and what the heck, how does this, and trying to figure out an internal DSL that was kind of, at least for me, really difficult. Or it was like, hey, let's all write decorators, right? And then all of a sudden it was everybody's using Draper, and using presenters, and so some of it's just like trying to find better ways to do things, but some things definitely become like part of the group think of the community. And then nobody thinks that it's odd that you're embracing this complexity, whether it's decorators or devise or whatever, because that's what everybody does.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. And to me, that makes me think of just the concept of cargo culting and taking beliefs that you don't understand and adopting them just because other people seem to be adopting them. It's better to think for yourself. Okay, going through the chat a little bit more. Mike, you also said Chris Date, Joe. I don't know what the name is.
Yeah.
You have 3
So-
versions here.
I know I had to ask Bard to finally figure out what the guy's name was, but yeah, he's a great author. He's written tons of columns and books about SQL. Chris Date is one of the inventors of the relational database. So
Yeah.
his stuff is old, but really well written. He has a book, doesn't have a very exciting title. It's an Introduction to Database Systems, Volume 2. And it's one of those old computer books that you can get in hardback, but it really helps because this is like pre-SQL. This is like when they were figuring out, well, how do we have a query language that can represent, what we need a relational database to do. And so what they were thinking about, and it's kind of a book that's kind of a screed against SQL by one of the people who was responsible for bringing it about, So kind of getting that contextual background about what problem was relational databases solving, and why it is the way it is. And part of it's probably Stockholm syndrome, right? I grew up with like Foxborough and then relational databases and then Delphi and all that, and you kind of had to earn your wings like the hard way. You really had to learn, gosh, all the subphrases of a SQL select statement and all that kind of stuff. And so now I guess it's easy for me to be like, everyone should learn this thing, but
Well, I think it's good. Like I read that book by Chris Date, Database in Depth, and I don't know where that falls into the whether the other one you mentioned is more fundamental or if this one's more fundamental or what. But this one that I read talked about I don't know if you call it a mathematical theory or logical theory behind the relational model, and explained how, unlike other products like MongoDB and stuff like that, this is backed by, I think it's a mathematical theory. I think that's how you'd categorize it. And he said it's logic and it's common sense, but it's formalized common sense. And
I think we're talking about set theory.
Yeah, and there was just something about the fact that it's all really like solidly grounded in irrefutable logic that was really appealing to me.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, like understanding where's and I'm not one, I start seeing Greek math characters and I start running away, but to know that those concepts are there and people who are better at math than me, thought through these things formally, is super powerful. And again, what were they trying to solve? I mean, they invented relational databases for the CIA, so they were trying to invent, storing lots of information easily. But they were also dealing with a technology at a time. I think it was IBM's vSAM, which is a hierarchical database that only had a certain number of levels deep you could go. So there was a time like in the 60s where with these incredibly restrained and incredibly constrained storage systems, they still made everything work.
Yeah, it's jogging my memory now. I remember in that other book you talked about before the relational database, these other types of databases that people tried, and they were very clumsy and awkward. And in hindsight, it seems like the relational model seems so obvious in hindsight, but it probably wasn't that obvious. And if I had like got time traveled back to then, I probably wouldn't have come up with it myself.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It seems like people get it or they don't. I can't tell you how many like fancy IT consulting gigs I did in the distant past. And it was like, if you joined more than one table, people were completely confused, like,
Interesting.
how could you join 3 or 4 tables in a query, and these are like business professionals in massive corporations, right? So, but it's also, the other thing I want to mention is that I've worked with some great developers who came out of the boot camps, but to a person, they almost none of them really understood databases. And I was what I saw as one of the biggest constraints on them growing as professionals.
Yeah, I think that's a super, super important thing for people to learn, because even if you're a front end developer, like being able, at least being conversant in that stuff, I feel like there's a real value in being able to create the whole entire thing top to bottom yourself. And database design and all that is a huge part of it. I want to get back to our guest. And I have a completely different topic for you, Jason. You announced recently that you're bringing back your own conference.
Yes. And that's about all the details I have is
Mhm.
that it will be next year and it will be in Memphis where I live. But I don't know. I looked at 6 Ruby conferences happening like on top of each other in the fall this year and thought, well, there's only like 2 or 3 in the States. Like we gotta get back to it. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm glad you decided to do that. I really enjoyed the Southeast Ruby that I went to. I think that was 2019 must have been, because that was the most recent one that was done. Oh, I think we
Is-
lost audio for a second. I think you're back though.
okay. Yeah, we decided we weren't gonna do 2020s in 2019 and really lucked out when
Yeah.
everything hit the fan. But yeah, excited to bring it back. I'm nervous to do it in Memphis because it used to be in Nashville, which
Was
is
in Nashville every time?
It's in Nashville
Mhm.
every time. It was just hard to put on a conference in a city I don't live in, much like you probably experience with Sin City.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna try and strip it down a little bit, focus more on like there'll be talks and stuff, but try and really like drive home the community part of it. And we'll see
Yeah, I
what
think that's
happens.
great. Yeah, and I was actually really pumped when I saw that you were doing it in Memphis instead of Nashville. I personally love Nashville. But for some reason it's really appealing to me that you're doing it in the place where you live.
Yeah, there's a lot like Memphis doesn't have the best reputation as a city, rightfully so. But there's a lot of like really good things here. And I've been here my whole life. I love it still. So I think there's gonna be some ways to incorporate some activities and just give it a feel that I'm familiar with. So yeah, I'm excited to bring some people to Memphis. And if we could get like 10 people to the conference, that's twice as many Ruby developers that live in Memphis. So it'd be a pretty big deal for me. So
Yeah. Well, I plan on going, so we
all
only
right,
need 8 more people.
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you bringing back Sin City was part of the thing that kind of sparked it too. Because
That's great to hear.
Yeah, the last time we spoke, you were kind of, I think, I want to say you're either unsure or you were just like, no. And so you brought it back. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, I'll do it too. So it'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, you know the story, Jason, and I don't want to tell it for the 1000th time, but I didn't plan to put on a conference. It happened kind of accidentally. And I was honestly a little bit reluctant to like take on that much of a job. Um, but I did everything intentionally like on easy mode. And so it didn't end up being an overwhelmingly large amount of work. And then it actually turned out pretty fun. I didn't know if I was going to be capable of like putting on an event and have like everything go smoothly without disasters and stuff like that, but nothing went wrong as far as I could tell. So yeah, doing it again in 2024 because the first one was in 2022. And then I might be having a conference at my house. Did you happen to hear about this, Jason?
I have not.
It's crazy. So I put out a tweet. Okay, so I live in West Michigan. I found out that RailsConf or RubyConf 2024 is going to be in Detroit in May. And so I'm like, okay, Detroit's just 2.5 hours from my house. And so I tweeted, hey, here's a crazy idea. What if I get a van and after RubyConf 2024, we just load up a bunch of people in a van, drive to my house, get some beers and some food, and we go camping on my property because I got 20 acres out here. And, I just tossed that out there. And like a bunch of people responded that they would come. And I'm like, you guys crazy? Okay. So I talked to my wife about it and like, we might actually do it.
Hold on. So you put the idea out there and got people to commit, and then you asked your wife about it.
Which is the incorrect order for me to have done that in. But yeah, that's how I did it.
I
Because it was
actually,
just a crazy idea, you know, like I had the idea and then 5 seconds later I tweeted it.
yeah, that's how those things start, though.
Yeah, it's
Well,
dangerous.
that's exciting.
Yeah. So if you guys have ever wanted to come to my house, you can come sit in this chair. Yeah, May 2024. Maybe. It's still, you know, still up in the air. Don't want to make promises.
You were mentioning that you tried to do Sin City on easy mode, and that's part of the reason I wanted to bring Southeast Ruby back, is because I felt like we always did everything on hard mode, and like we lost money, we lost a lot of energy trying to like create. The only conferences I knew when I started putting on Southeast Ruby were Rails and RubyConf, and those are like, you know, massive events put on by volunteers and people who like dedicate their life to putting on events.
Yeah.
And so when I realized like, oh, you don't have to necessarily have lunch for everyone. You don't have to have like conference swag.
Yeah.
And like you were like having fun at the conference. I was like, oh, that's achievable. And so that's part of the reason too.
Yeah.
We're going to try and strip it down a little bit.
I see. Yeah, well, I'm happy that you got those ideas, because yeah, I did it out of just sheer laziness. Like I'm like, swag, like no, I'm not doing that. No way. But yeah, I that's interesting that you say that. Like you saw that I was having fun, and I never really thought about just now that like a lot of people probably don't have the opportunity to have fun at their own conference because they're too busy running the conference.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it was 3 of us putting ours on. We were all exhausted, like nonstop.
I can imagine.
So
Yeah, wow. Yeah, there's at least 1 or 2 things that I plan to do this time that I didn't do in the past. And don't hold me to any of this because these are just ideas. But I wanted to have like a custom cocktail menu with
cool.
with like programming themes. Like one of the cocktails could be, for example, the drink is just an old fashioned, but we call it a legacy code, for example. Stuff like that. But I don't know, like logistically, like can I get the bartender to like make these special drinks and like all that? I don't know, but I think it would be fun.
I feel like if there's a bartender in the world that would do that, they're going to be in Vegas. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's a
yeah,
cool idea. I like that.
yeah. Yeah, and if anybody's curious, the way we did it last year and the way we're going to do it this year also is so it's a 2-day conference, Thursday and Friday. And this isn't, I'm not trying to give a big ad for the conference. This is just how it's going to go if anybody's thinking about going. 2 days, Thursday and Friday, and at the end of the first day, which will be maybe like 4 or 5 p.m. Well, that's when the talks will end, and then around 5 or so we'll have like a happy hour. And last time we had like the hotel provided us a bartender and they provided us like a separate room, so we all went from the main room where the talks were held to this other room. And by the way, it was completely silent in that room. I am definitely going to bring like a Bluetooth speaker this time, because that was like one of my few regrets was we didn't have any music. But that was still pretty fun. And then everybody was kind of let loose to do whatever they wanted during the evening. And then the next day, which was of course the last day, there was kind of an unofficial gathering. We all went to this bar called the Velveteen Rabbit, which I thought was a really cool place. It was the kind of bar where they like really emphasize the quality of the drinks, which is it's kind of what I'm interested in. Like I'm not a big fan of bars in general. One of my friends said something that I thought was really apt. He said the bar is a fake party. And I'm like, yeah, the bar kind of is a fake party. And often the music is just so loud you can't even talk, and it's just not fun. But this place, the focus is on the quality of the drinks, and they have a lot of like tiki drinks and stuff like that. I thought it was really great.
That was cool. I am curious. Supposedly they're tearing the Tropicana down. Are you
Really?
booked there or?
No, the venue is as of yet not nailed down.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tough thing. You know this, Jason. It's like a chicken egg problem where you have to like commit. You have to like contractually commit to a certain number of people, or else you're on the hook for a lot of money. At least at the places I've talked to,
Mhm.
and that's tough. That's part of why I'm limiting it to 100 tickets, because like I'm confident I can sell 100 tickets, but beyond that, I'm really not
Yeah.
sure, and I don't want to get a room block for like 300 people and then only sell 150 tickets.
That's the stuff you lose sleep over when you book conferences,
Yeah.
is that. So
You've
Yeah, I
had that
suppose-
situation?
yeah, we only did a room block last year and we met it, but like the first year we just overdid it on venue and stuff, and we did not have near the number of people come that we thought we would. And
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
it was a good tax write-off, but that's about all it was good for. So
Yeah. Yeah. We lost money on Sin City Ruby too. It was, I lost like $2,000. And if I had only known, I learned that people weren't expecting catering. And in fact, a lot of people didn't even eat their like $40 shitty soggy sandwiches, which made me a little bit sad. And if we had not done that, we would have like broken even on the thing. So hopefully this time we can even do a little bit better than break even. People say don't do conferences to make money, which, of course I lost money on that last one. I think there's probably ways to do it so it can be profitable. At least not losing money. That's like
yeah,
a good
that's the
starting point.
goal.
Yeah.
That's the only goal for me.
Yeah. Yeah. What now? We maybe got about 15 minutes left. I try to do these for about an hour. Where do we go? Anybody have any topics they'd like to hear us touch on? I'm looking at the chat here. Mike said, given things that are legal in Michigan, perhaps a reggae influenced gathering. Took me a second to get that one. Yeah, weed is legal here, as it is in quite a few states now. Yeah. If anybody wants to come to my house and bring some weed and smoke it, knock yourself out. What else? Anybody have any questions for Jason?
How did you end up starting in with Chris Oliver on that podcast? And I forget there's a third guy as well. I forget
Yeah,
his name.
Andrew Mason. Yeah. Chris, so RailsConf 2016 was in Kansas City. I'm pretty sure it's 2016. Yeah. And Chris lives in St. Louis. So I was like, I just emailed Chris. I didn't know him. And I was like, hey, are you going to RailsConf? And he was like, or like, can we like grab a drink? And he was like, yeah, let's meet up. So we met the night before the conference, but he actually didn't stay for RailsConf. He just drove over to like meet me. And we just kind of became friends from there. And so we would like hang out and talk. And one day we were like, we should like record us doing this. And it was like, it is so, the first, I don't know, 100 episodes are very cringy, but it just kind of came out of us just naturally like hanging out and talking. So it's kind of a cool way. And then Andrew, I have no idea how Andrew joined us. Chris worked that out, and then Andrew and I became really good friends, and he works at Podia now. So it's been cool.
Yeah, I remember I first met you in person, Jason, at RailsConf 2019, I believe. Met you and Chris at the same time. Yeah, and that was just like, that was really special for me because I knew of you guys from your podcast. And so, I'm sure you've had people say this to you before, but like I felt like I knew you guys, even though you didn't know me. And so it was just so cool to like listen to you guys and then be able to meet you in person.
It's really cool. It's really cool for me because I'm pretty socially awkward, and so sometimes it's hard for me to like start conversations, but people will start conversations with me just like based on stuff we talk about on the podcast, and that's like I can let my guard down so quickly. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. I'm socially awkward also. I can ruin it. One of my friends, he said this thing to me one time that I'll always remember. He was talking about himself and he's like, I can ruin any situation. And I thought it was a funny brag. Anyway, yeah, if you guys, dear people in the room here and dear viewers on YouTube later, one of the benefits, now I am trying to pitch Sin City Ruby unabashedly, self-promoting. That's one of the things, like it's going to be just 100 people. And so there's going to be, Jason will be there, obviously. I'll mention a few of the other speakers we have so far. Irina Nazarova, CEO of Evil Martians, Vladimir Dementyev from Evil Martians, who's like one of the smartest programmers I've ever encountered. He's just super knowledgeable. And then we have Adrian Marin, creator of Avo. And I think that's all we've, Obi Fernandez is the keynote speaker, author of The Rails Way. So it's a star-studded cast, and that's fewer than half the speakers. There's going to be like 6 or 7 other speakers I haven't announced yet. And it's going to be such a small group that like you're going to get a chance not only to meet the other attendees, but to actually like spend time with the speakers too, which is like, at a big conference like RailsConf, like I feel kind of weird about just like walking up to like a famous person and like trying to talk to them, because like, who am I? Whereas if it's a much smaller thing, like you almost have no choice, like you have to interact with these people.
Yeah, it's also, I don't know, it's like a more human experience too when it's a smaller gathering, because it's
Yeah,
really just people hanging out. So it's
right. Like at a big conference, it feels like business networking,
yes,
and at a small conference, it just feels like people hanging out.
yeah.
All right. Well, that's maybe a good place to leave it. Before we go,
There-
Jason. Yeah.
There was one question I did want to answer that came in.
Oh,
About,
yeah. Helmet asked, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the question about how much Podia uses Stimulus Reflex versus Turbo. We are moving all in on Turbo. We started using Stimulus Reflex when Hotwire and Turbo was like the seed that DHH planted in the world, and was like, it's, we have this game-changing thing coming soon, and we couldn't wait any longer for coming soon. So we went in on Reflex, but it worked pretty well, but we've had some trouble scaling WebSockets using Rails and at our scale. And so we've kind of pumped the brakes on Reflex. Plus, Turbo being kind of the like Rails sanctioned way to do things also makes buying a little easier. Plus, Nate's doing a lot of cool things now, like building similar libraries that like Cable Ready and Reflex, but on top of Turbo. So I see just a lot of everything moving that direction. So we still have some Stimulus Reflex, but we're not building new stuff in it.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, Jason, before we sign off, anywhere you want to send people, anything you want, any links you want to share, anything like that?
Yeah, I would send you my website, but I don't ever put anything on it. So I would just send you to Twitter. It's just JM Charnes, and I can't even sell it because it's me just shit posting. So, but come hang out with me there and we'll talk shit together. It'd be great.
All right. So last little plug here for the conference. Tickets go on sale July 17th. Again, it's limited to just 100 tickets. Tickets will be available from the 17th to the 21st, which is that Friday. And sales will close either that Friday or when the 100 tickets run out, whichever comes first. And the conference takes place March 21st and 22nd, 2024 in Las Vegas. I hope you join us there. And Jason, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
All right, see you guys later.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone.